Hi everyone, this is my run on the Dastardly Dominus Chaos Challenge fight, which is the Emperor's Chaos Challenge stage. And as always, before I head into the battle, I'll be giving a quick overview of the party and the fight mechanics. And before I go into the details, also just a mention that I did complete the regular chaos with a budget team of 0 ingots, and I will put a link to that fight down in the video description as well. And for those interested in specific parts of the fight only, the video description will also contain a timestamp for you to skip ahead. So coming into this fight, it consists of 2 waves. The first wave is pretty easy. It's the usual swarm fly and its minions, the small swarm flies. And this fight is only, or this wave is only dangerous if you allow the minions to attack you and amass brave. Otherwise, it's really more of an annoyance than a danger. The flies can inflict poison on your party and inflict some debuffs. And once the small swarm flies are dead, after a few turns, the main or the boss swarmfly will resummon them again. The wave will end once the boss dies, regardless of whether any minions are still left alive. So the way past the first wave is to just focus the damage on the big swarmfly while you keep the small swarmflies broken, and the small flies will naturally die from AoE or splash damage anyway. So in other words, just focus damage on the big swarmfly and you get past the first wave without too much problems. Now the second wave, or the main boss wave, consists of a pair of Firion scorpions, and mostly it's an unremarkable wave. The scorpions tend to do big brave hits, and so one of the challenges is to try to brave shift them down each time after they do their brave attacks. Their notable mechanic lies in raising their tail and then using Firion laser the following turn. So when they raise their tail, you get a warning and you can actually see them raising their actual tail. They get an attack and max brave buff, and on their next turn, if you see them targeting themselves, they will do a brave charge, which is an instant turn, and then they will follow this up immediately with an attack called Firion Laser. So because Brave Charge is an instant turn, what happens is that Brave Charge gives them an immense Brave battery, and then they will unleash this Brave onto your party in the form of HP damage when they use Firion Laser. So the way around this is to either with the synergy characters is to either inflict the HP attack disable with Kefka, which lasts for 2 turns normally. So if you see them targeting themselves, just have Kefka use HP attack disable, and then it will prevent them from using Firion Laser after using Brave Charge. They will still use Firion Laser on their next turn, but because you have enough turns to shave their brave and break them, using Firion Laser from a broken state does very pitiful damage onto your party. So you only get hit by around 1000 damage per character, assuming they use Firion Laser coming from a broken state. Another way is to use the Emperor, which is the main featured character, to lay traps onto the Firion Scorpions. So it functions the same way in the sense that once they use Brave Charge, they get an instant turn after that, but how the trap works is that after using Brave Charge, if any trap ticks down, the trap will then shave the Brave that they get from the Brave Charge and re-break the boss again, thereby causing them to use Firion Laser from a broken state, which again does about only 1000 damage to your party. If you can't manage to control the bosses that way, the the challenge here is that the synergy characters can't really heal. So Firion can self-heal, but he doesn't have any party heals. So one way you can get around this is to use Alexander's Summon if you are worried about taking significant HP damage from the fight. Of course, Alexander's Summon doesn't last too long, so you need to time or at least try to control the damage as far as possible. Once both Scorpions are pretty low health, so I think it's below the 40% mark, they have a higher tendency to raise their tails and use Brave Charge followed by Ferrum Laser. So the best time to save your summon, and if you have Kefka's burst available, save his burst, is the later part of the fight when they are close to 50% or slightly lower health, so that you can quickly burst them down before they get into a pattern of raising their tails and unleashing Ferrum Laser on your party. As for party composition, I'm a bit overkill here because all my characters are full 3-3. I initially planned to have Firion at 0 out of 3 for this fight, but considering he's going to be an LD BT character 2 months down the line where I will definitely max him out, I decided to just max him out here because since I already have his EX weapon. So with a full 3-3 party, it's very easy. I use Shiva Summon to try to give Emperor many turns, or as many turns as possible while his traps are still active, so that I can abuse his LD HP plus attack. But if you are worried about taking HP damage, I think Alexander's Summon is probably a better choice here overall. So with that said, let's move into the fight, and I will outline some of the decisions I make as we move along. I'll see you there. Okay, so starting on the first wave, it's very easy, just target the big swarm fly in the middle and unleash all your attacks. I decided to be a bit conservative with the Emperor here and try to save his LD a bit, but now that I've completed the fight, on hindsight, I don't think there's need for it, and my recommendation is to just start off the fight using Emperor's LD and buff himself with his LD buff so that you can immediately go to town on the damage. The one challenge though of pairing Emperor with Kefka, it's really not a recommended combo because Kefka alone already does 6 debuffs, and his LD actually enframes the debuffs. You do not actually want to enframe all 6 debuffs on the enemy because if you do it, you will not be able to land any traps with the Emperor, and that will effectively neuter the Emperor's DPS in a very significant manner. So you have to be very careful with Kefka's LD use. If you really have them purple, there's really no strong need to use Kefka's LD. Another way is to use Kefka's Trine and then use his LD to enframe the Trine debuffs, because honestly the HP attack, disable and blind are the real stars of Kefka's debuffs, and extending them by 1 turn really helps a lot. And doing so, Kefka then only enframes 3 debuffs, his EX debuff, the Sneering Clown, and his HP attack disable, as well as blind, which allows 3 slots for Emperor to land his EX 3 trap debuffs. So you can consider using a rotation something along the lines of Trine into LD and then only using his Light of Judgment after using LD, so that you don't enframe the debuffs from his Light of Judgment attack. Okay, so the Swarmfly is targeting himself, and that's a signal that it's about to resummon its ads. However, I'm not too concerned because the party can very easily deal with the ads anyway. Especially if you have Emperor, Emperor can very easily break the ads and damage them down through his traps. So don't be too worried. And once the main fly is dead, the ads will despawn anyway, even if they are still alive. So just focus damage on the main fly to get you through the first round. Okay, so second wave, my goal here is to try to damage them evenly because since I have Kefka's burst, I plan to use Kefka's burst at around the 50% HP mark to deal significant damage while getting his burst effect in the field, so that my damage will still remain significant at the later or second half of the second wave here. If you have Empress LD, the best time to summon is to wait until all the scorpions are debuffed from Emperor's EX, so the 3 traps are active on both scorpions, and that's because Emperor's HP will trigger all 3 traps if they are present on the enemy. On normal circumstances, you don't have many opportunities to trigger this because the boss will get a turn and activate all 3 traps. However, if you summon when all 3 traps are active, you actually have 1 or 2 turns where Emperor can use his HP and trigger all 3 traps at once without removing the traps, which accounts for very significant damage while getting effects such as the delay from the jury trap trigger. Also, you saw that over here, Scorpion A tried to target itself to use Wave Charge into Firion Laser, but because I hit it with Kefka's Trying HP Attack Disable, it used Brave Charge but couldn't unleash the Firion Laser. And you'll see later, once it gets its next turn, that Firion Laser does very little damage. Okay, so we unleash Firion Laser from a broken state, and here it does 649 damage per character. So the goal here, as you can see, is to get around the boss using its Brave Charge into instant Firion Laser, either by unleashing traps on the boss that will trigger after you use Brave Charge, or at least using Kefka's Shrine on the boss when you see it targeting itself. Either one will do fine. And after that, you can very comfortably tank the Firion Laser attack. Between the Firion Laser attacks, the boss is actually very easy to deal with. It normally does very heavy brave damage and will likely break one of your characters when it targets that character, but as long as you can shave it after, it's not that dangerous. And with this sort of party in the synergy characters, it's very easy to shave the boss's brave, especially if you have the Emperor and his traps. So here, Scorpion B is targeting itself, so I know a Brave Charge into Frame Laser is coming next, which is why I use Trying with Kefka. And here is, you can see again, same as before, it does Brave Charge, gets 18,000 Brave. It did get triggered by a trap, so even without HP attack disable, I would have been fine. But you can see here, I managed to prevent it from using Firion Laser because of the HP attack disable, and now I've broken the boss, so the subsequent Firion Laser will deal pitiful damage. The good thing about Firion Laser is that there's no Brave hit connected to it, so as long as the boss uses it from a broken state, the damage is always fixed at a very low amounts of damage, so you don't have to worry about characters getting broken by a Firion Laser or anything like that. Okay, I decided to burst here because all 3 traps are active on the boss, and I was thinking of using Kefka's burst into immediately summoning. On hindsight, I think it's probably okay to wait a bit more so that they are down to their 50% health. So probably waiting until the Emperor's next EX would make better sense. But since the fight is pretty easy, I don't think there's any harm using this earlier. So the goal here, or the rationale, is to get Kefka to use his burst so that the burst effect is in the field, and therefore if I summon right after that, I can fully capitalize on the bonus damage from Kefka's burst effect. If the bosses are not debuffed by Emperor's traps when you use Kefka's burst, it's very important to use Hyperdrive first before you use either of Kefka's skills, because like I said, you don't want to enframe all 6 of his debuffs, or the Emperor will not be able to land any more traps. If the 3 traps are already present, as in my case here, then you don't really have to worry about the order that you use Kefka's Hyperdrive in his burst mode. Mention I popped my summon, and I did make a mistake here. On hindsight, I think it's better to use the Seize attack to launch the enemy. I was thinking of saving the launch on the Scorpion B for Emperor to deal more damage, but Seize attack actually batteries the party, and that would have been a better choice of a launch attack. So during summon, as I mentioned, it's the best time to abuse the Emperor's HP+++ attack because it triggers all 3 traps that are present and deals massive damage. Couple that with the burst effect from Kefka, and this is where you can significantly whittle down the boss's health. I think it would have been better if I did this burst into summon a little bit later, maybe when the bosses are at about 40 to 50% health, because if I do that, it will enable me to kill off the boss shortly after the summon animation have ended. Also, you see here that I ran out of the Emperor's LD buff, which isn't optimal. So again, if I waited one more cycle until Emperor's next EX before I go into Burst plus Summon, I would have had the opportunity to refresh his LD buff, and that would have allowed me to use another HP+++ attack here to again fully utilize the trap damage. Okay, so at this stage, if you did your burst and summon a bit earlier, as in my case, at this tail end of the fight, where the bosses can get a bit more dangerous, this is really the best place to fully abuse Kefka's Trine and LD. So using Trine to land 2 turns HP attack disable and then thereafter using his LD to increase it to 3 turn and then frame it will give your party that window of opportunity to continue bringing the damage and finishing off the boss. As long as the bosses are debuffed with HP attack disable and making sure it's at least 2 turns just in case they are about to use Wave Charge into Firion Laser, you're pretty much okay for the remainder of the fight. So I saw boss A targeting itself, and I know a Brave Charge into Firion Laser is coming, that's why I used Kefka's Shrine. And since HP attack disable will just delay the Firion Laser, and the next boss turn will always be Firion Laser, what this means is that as long as Kefka has Shrine ability users left, you can keep using Shrine and extending it with his LD to continuously inflict the boss with HP attack disable and continuously preventing the boss from using Firion Laser, thereby actually locking the boss indefinitely as long as you have turns left on the HP attack disable debuff. And this really just gives you quite a lot of turns to finish off the boss. Here I did make a mistake. I accidentally let HP attack disable tick down, and I guess it's a good example here, a good showcase that even at low health, Firion Laser from a broken state doesn't even deal 1000 HP damage per character, so it's pretty safe. That's it. Hope you enjoy the video. As always, do leave a like, subscribe, or leave a comment. Until then, I'll see you in the next Chaos fight. Bye bye.